I'll start. I should have started this. I'd like to introduce Dr. Griselda Martinez, our speaker for today. And Griselda is the CEO of Ascendo Strategies. And Griselda, if you'd like to take over, take it away.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing good. I'm going to ask you for a huge favor, and Wesley, thank you so much for having your camera on. I like to keep the conversation very interactive, and I would love to see your beautiful faces. So if you are in a place where you can turn on your camera, I would totally appreciate it. Rebecca, thank you so much for answering to my call. It's way more fun to speak to people's faces than names. So if anybody else can open their cameras, I would appreciate it. Ziani, thank you so much. Lava, oh my God, beautiful faces. Thank you. It's definitely more engaging, even for you, right? You see your face and their expressions of people. So thank you. As Aaron mentioned, my name is Griselda Martinez. A little bit of background about me so you can start framing questions and thinking of how you can utilize me as your partner for the next 2 hours to help you get to a government contract, which is the ultimate goal for this type of sprints, right? You look beautiful, Lava, don't worry. So a little bit of background. I have been in the economic development field for over 15 years. Before that, I was in the private sector. I worked at a binational company in El Paso and Juarez. We did manufacturing of metal parts. I've also been in a nonprofit world where we train people to reskill women to find different jobs in their industries, to have better wages, etc. Also, I did a lot of research on economics. My bachelor's is in economics, my master's in public administration, and my doctorate in economic development with an emphasis in regional development. So that is on the academic side of things. Professionally, in the economic development field, I've been working with entrepreneurs for also close to 15 years. But a couple of things to highlight. At some point of my career, I became the deputy director for the economic development department for the city of Las Cruces. And then I moved as the director for the department. And I want to pause here because I want to drop seeds that you can start thinking like, how can she help me answer questions as I go through this process? Okay, so parenthesis on part of the role of me being the director of economic development. So as you may know, all the public agencies, government entities, because of transparency, they have to go through a procurement process, whether it's at the department level or at the agency level. When they're bigger amounts, usually, and we're going to go into this in detail, the request for proposals, what happens is that there is a committee that is part of the selection process. So being in the economic development department in the deputy and director positions allow me to be part of many different procurement committees. And why am I sharing this with you? Because I've seen the behind the scenes discussions. I've heard the why somebody is selected, the why somebody is not selected, the items in terms of negotiation, items in terms of how is like the discussions on like, I want this vendor, I will recommend this vendor, and then there is a discussion between the selection committee, and ultimately there is somebody selected. So as we cover the content today, and as we talk about your own businesses and your own proposals to make you successful for government procurement, please have that in mind as like, what can I ask Griselda that will help me be more competitive? Okay, so that's the purpose of that context. Then in my career, 3 years ago, I started my own business in economic development consulting. And my ideal client is a small local government that doesn't have necessarily a big economic development department, and I come in with my team and we provide services. And I'll tell you that story because how many of you are either one-person show with contractors or less than 5 employees? If you raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and okay, 4. So I'll tell you my story because and Joseph, thank you, Joseph, because I'm gonna be giving you also strategies on how to make your proposals more competitive. Okay, for Zig, Nandi, Demelier, Valerie, if you also okay, thank you, Zig. If you are a little different, just let me know and we can tailor the hacks for you as well. So can you please tell me how many years or months or weeks you've been in business? You can open the mic and you can put it in the chat. I just want to understand who I'm talking to and so we can tailor better the information. So let's see, years or months or weeks, or you're in the idea stage. Just let me know in the chat or open your mic, however you prefer. About 3 years. Thank you, Rebecca. 3 months. Thank you, Ziani. How about you, Weasley?
So I've been working on this project for about 5 years.
Got it. Okay. And you're Joseph, 1.5, Zeke, about 1 year. Okay. All right. Very cool. 2 years in current business, but industry over 15 years. All right. Okay. So if you would tell me a little bit, and I have the information you submitted as part of your application. So I have that context and I visited those websites that I had access to. So I have some context for all of you. Valerie is in the idea stage, still working professionally and looking at development opportunity for the retirement years. Okay, so that's exciting because we're gonna explore this new territory together. Okay, so tell me why you are interested in government contracts. And you can open the mic.
I believe
Nandi. Nandi, you want to go?
Yeah, you said my name right.
Yeah,
Awesome.
awesome.
Good to see you again.
Likewise.
I have been in 2 car accidents, not my fault, that have left me with a lot of brain injury symptoms, but they don't interfere with my business that I've been trying over and over from 2003 to get going because of there's some accommodations and tools that I need to have. And the state doesn't know how to provide those. And they think because I look like a grown-up, there's nothing wrong with me. And it's just a challenge. Why I want to be in this class is not specifically because I want to work with governments, but I do want to see, the documents and what you have to go through. That's a nice path,
Okay.
right? And
Thank you for sharing, Nandi.
So the last is I'm more looking to sell large amounts to large businesses.
Got it. Thank you, Nandi. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for being here with us, despite the challenges. You're a trooper. Weasley, you were going to share with us.
So the project that I'm working on is to buy us some time in the fight against the rising tide of antimicrobial resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And with the government being the largest customer base, this will be really valuable information for me to learn how to provide that tool to the government.
Awesome. And I read that you are a past participant of the New Mexico Small Business Assistance Program, right?
Yes, I have a research project going on right now with some of the data that I've collected.
Are you working with Sandia or Los Alamos?
I'm working with the university, New Mexico State University,
Oh,
and their
cool.
microbiology department.
Awesome, awesome. I used to be the person in charge of that program at the university. So they're fun, and I hope that you get a lot of really cool data back that will help you catapult your business. Thank you for sharing, Wesley.
Thank you.
I have Ziki, am I saying it correctly? Yes, Ziki. Okay, so Ziki says government is their ideal customer profile. They help county clerks spot misinformation around elections using AI. So give me 1 second here. I apologize. My apologies. With all of these things going on, it was a family call. Okay, so Ziki, you are using it specifically for elections. Is that the primary purpose of the software that you're offering?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, all right. So may I ask you why particularly elections and not any other type of misinformation, which is what I gather from the website?
Yeah, I think that every company has to start somewhere. And for us, we're an early stage tech startup.
Awesome.
We went through a venture accelerator. So this is our kind of starting point, our beachhead market. But I do think that we can
Awesome.
definitely apply this technology to many other departments in government. It's just that county clerks were top of mind because we know a lot of them. And with the election coming up, it seemed like a good place to test out the technology.
I was gonna say perfect timing, right? To leverage upon all the things that are happening. So I'm excited to help you move forward, Ziki. Valerie says, to career household, we have both worked for governmental entities, higher ed and national lab, the vast majority of our careers. So you have inside information, Valerie, okay? We are comfortable with the process and procedures and appreciate the wide range of opportunities available through government entities. Perfect. All right. Thank you for sharing, everyone. What do you see as the biggest barriers for each one of you to access government contracts, whether it's local municipality, county, state, federal? What is the biggest barrier you see for your business to access government contracts? You can open the mic or you can put it in the chat, however you want.
So I see the largest barrier is compliance. I mean, once
Compliance.
you do all of your structural compliance, then cybersecurity compliance and staff to be able to perform that function.
Okay. When you say cybersecurity, Wesley, can you expand on that as to how it applies to your business?
Well, from what I understand from what Alethea's presentation is that we are a secondary portal for the government for any kind of malware or spying or anything like that to penetrate the government system. So we're we're the we're the infection point.
Okay. Maybe I can make some clarification there. So your product would be, let me just make sure that I have the correct one for you, Wesley. So your product is a manufactured product, right? So you would deliver this little product for the government to install in their facilities, correct?
Right.
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit of clarify maybe some of what you just mentioned. So everybody is subject to cybersecurity challenges, right? However, when we become a vendor for the government, unless we are providing some type of software or some type of IT related solution, really the only way that we have, like, let's say I sell water bottles for the city. So I bring my water bottles and deliver it into City Hall, right? That is the end of the service. And then I invoice the city and they pay me. So in that situation, because it's a product base, there is really no opportunity for a threat to be established in terms of cybersecurity, unless it's via communication and in email that we're all subjects to, right? So that is one point of clarification. Unless you are like actually connecting to their systems, really vendors don't have access to the back end, if I could say that. And rather is more everybody is subject to cybersecurity attacks. And common ways are emails and weird text messages and all these things, right? But I would encourage you, Wesley, to not see that as a barrier to your company, especially because you are product based. So you would deliver your product and that would be the end of the transaction, unless it's via communication and email. So and I can expand further if offline, Wesley. And also reach out to the presenters from last week to make sure that it is accurate. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, so Lava says, knowing where to find them and how to make a bid. Okay, we're gonna go into how to find them, and then we're gonna go into how to make a bid, and we can discuss further. Rebecca.
Yes, the biggest challenge for me is knowing the right questions to ask potential employees. I'm a retired college professor and my field is genetics.
Mm-hmm.
Transitioning into this business world, and I guess it's entrepreneurship.
Yeah, congratulations, Rebecca. That's a bold move.
Oh, it's scary. It's a steep learning.
It's exciting. It's exciting. It is daunting, but it's exciting at the same time.
Yeah, and at this point, I have a grant proposal in to the government. It's actually a DoD group.
Mhm.
And if that's funded, it would be next June. And the company has to be compliant with their bookkeeping system.
Mhm.
So, and that's the Department of Defense bookkeeping system, which
Right.
and also probably cybersecurity, although we won't be strictly doing anything cyber.
Mhm.
Do want to mention, because I noticed Wesley's doing antimicrobial work, and that's one thing I'm also doing, but it's from a testing side.
Got it. Got it. You and Wesley may have some interesting possibilities there to collaborate, even through the NMSBA program. And you're doing an individual one, right, Wesley?
Yes, mine's individual and not a leverage project.
Yeah, because I mean, depending on what you're working on, there may be the potential for some synergies for the leverage. But anyway, Rebecca, thank you for sharing with me about your what you see as the biggest barrier, which is what questions to ask potential employees. Is that what you said? So people that you want to hire?
Right, because at some point it's it's just been one person business so far, just doing proof of concept experiments. But I need the people to do the business stuff. And if this opportunity comes through, it's going to involve accounting and procurement.
Got it.
And I just want to have some idea of what they need to know. So I need to know just a little bit.
Got
Not
it.
get myself in trouble.
Got it. Okay, let me put that in the parking lot and we'll come back to that question, okay, Rebecca? Because this would be more like strategy for the business, but hopefully we can cover at some point towards the second part of the workshop, okay? Anybody else? Anybody else wants to share with me what you perceive as your largest or your biggest barrier to access government contracts? Ziki, Joseph, Valerie, Silvino, welcome. All right, so let's get started with the actual presentation, and I am excited that you will get to
Good morning. I lost my mute button.
good
Silvino.
morning.
This is Silvino. Sorry I'm late.
No problem, no problem. Welcome to the group. Hold on, I'm now having to okay.
And you asked what was the biggest problem. My biggest problem in getting government is just all the logistics, because I'm trying to run a design business from day to day. And I brought this up to my partner. It's almost kind of like I need to hire somebody to come in every day, or contract somebody to come in and help me get through all the paperwork of it.
Related to a government contract?
Yes, yes.
All right. Okay. Well, hopefully this will give you some strategies and information on how to possibly do that. Okay. So again, the name of my company is Ascendo Strategies. And this PowerPoint presentation, you will receive it, and my contact information is in there in case you have follow-up questions to this presentation. Okay. So first of all, we're going to cover types of procurement because we may know some, but just to make sure that we all have common ground here, I'm going to talk about internal processes for local and state procurements, as I mentioned before. We're going to talk about how to find the opportunities, how to create a competitive package based on the requirements. We're going to cover state, then local contracts with different examples and examples of how successful bids have been successful. And then lastly, we have a workbook that you will be able to utilize as a guide as you continue to make progress towards these efforts. But let me tell you, the first thing is, when I started my own business, my second client actually was a government entity. And when we think about when we think about government contracts, we think of like these thousands of dollars, right? That we're like, wow, this is like my business is set for a while. And that is why the government contracts are so attractive, right? Because they may be volume. However, my first contract for government was $5,000. $5,000. It was not much, but I was the happiest camper because it was my first official contract and it was within a municipality. And then guess what? And I'm telling you stories because I want you to learn from the things that I did not do right, that I would do differently. Okay. So I remember I mapped the different stages of the work that I was supposed to do. I put it on my notebook. I calculated X number of hours by the task. And then I calculated an hourly rate for my work. Okay, so how many of you have mapped like the tasks that you may have to do for a government contract? Like, I would like to do X and Y for X entity in the government. Silvina, you open the mic. Anybody has done some like strategy work on like, what do I need to do to get a government contract? No. Okay. All right. So
No.
good. Okay, Rebecca.
Yeah, I think part of a lot of writing the proposal was doing just that.
Okay.
To match the strategy.
Perfect. So you have, because of the proposal you wrote, you had to think through a lot of the parts. Okay, perfect. And for those that haven't, we're gonna go into some exercises to help you get there. Okay, so I calculated that this work was going to be about 40 hours of work. So I set an hourly rate, I multiply for the number of hours, I came up with $5,000. Guess what? 2 months later, I'm not exaggerating, I was still working on that project, and it had not been a week, but it had been 2 full months of work for the government that I underestimated what I was going to utilize in time. So the first thing is we need to not inflate it, but not be so optimistic on how we're gonna get there, okay? So that is my story, and I'm sticking to it, and I will get you the hacks on how to make them better, and how that $5,000 contract was a bridge for me to get different contracts later on, okay? So we're gonna, a part of the workbook, we're gonna do a little bit of what I mentioned earlier on the exercises, okay? So different types of procurement. We have tangible goods, which may be what Wesley has. It may be similar to what Joseph has, which are apparel and things like that. And then we have services. These are things that may not necessarily require a high technical degree of expertise, which may be janitorial. It can be services that are not necessarily called professional, quote unquote, okay? Then we have professional services, which may be similar to, let's see, Ziani, maybe Lava's example, maybe Silvino's, where you are professionals in a specific area and your expertise will help those entities get the goals that they're looking for. And then there are hybrids, and a hybrid may be similar to what Ziki may have with a platform, but also he may need to do some training for these people, right? So the platform is software, it can be membership, it can be some type of product, but the training is some type of professional service, okay? So those are the type of like a hybrid approach to a procurement piece. These are very also often tied to hardware. So sometimes you buy a computer and then you need the support to include the software, and then you need the technical support to help people become comfortable with the software, etc. So those are the 4 type of procurement options. In the chat, can you tell me where you think that you are? Then number 1 is tangible goods, number 2 is services, number 3 is professional services, and number 4 is hybrids. Can you give me where you think you fit into these 4 different types?
Professional services.
Professional service. So Silvino is number 3. And let me see. Okay, chat. Rebecca is professional services, Lava professional services, Zeke is tangible goods, as well as Joseph, Ziani professionals. All right. Valerie is also professional. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So there are different procurement methods. And one, I think the most famous one is the RFP. But I want to bring attention to these broader options, because what I mentioned, my first contract as a $5,000 contract, it was not an RFP, it was not a bid, it was a direct purchase because of the amount that this contract was, okay? So even though even though the contract was very small, it positioned me in a very competitive place that allowed me to do other things later on. So a direct purchase is for smaller amounts typically, okay? So for instance, the city of Albuquerque, and I know a lot of you are in the central area of the state, so I'm gonna have a lot of examples related to Albuquerque, Bernalillo County, the state as a whole. So for instance, the city of Albuquerque, they allow direct purchases for anything under $10,000. How many of you would be really happy if you got a contract for, let's say, $9,000 right now, right? Raise your hand, right? I would be very happy. So this is super important because this is the easiest way to get your foot in the door. And not only I mean, there are a lot of different pieces that you can utilize this for. The first one is you put the name of your company out there, right? People start to know who you are, what your company does. Number two, you start to establish a relationship with that buyer, with that department, with the procurement process, with the procurement department, name it. You start establishing that different type of relationship that if you haven't had a government contract, it's all new. The third advantage of this is that you start going through the process of becoming a vendor for a government entity. And this is a whole different, like people who, there are a couple of people who are familiar with the government as an entity, as an employee. But when your skin is in the game, and every step of the way, every day that goes by is one day that you still don't have the contract, then that's a different approach, right? So you become familiar with the process, and then you can determine your level of comfort and what areas are weak and strong for you and your business that you can either leverage upon or work upon them to make you stronger for the next round, okay? What if we are doing discounts for pilots and then conversation to a full deployment? Ziki, is this for a pilot for the use of the platform? So what would be the difference between the pilot and the full deployment? And I think Ziki is typing. For the use of the software, yes, the pilot is the demo to test and the full deployment is full implementation. Okay, so the demo really it's not, the demo, they're not gonna pay anything, right? So what I would recommend there, because there is no payment, is that you actually reach out to the different entities, and this would be more like a sales call for them to become aware of your software. And then you can establish that opportunity for them to talk to you for the full implementation. However, depending on the numbers, and we'll go through that in just a bit, depending on the numbers, you may have to go through an RFP as a whole, or if you don't have competition, and I'm not very familiar with your field, so I don't know what other competitors may be out there. But there may be the option of sole source, and sole source can be tricky, but it's definitely something that you would need to work out with the actual entity that you're working with. In your instance, Ziki, I would highly recommend you start reaching out to the people, and I will have really cool information that you can leverage, that you can actually start calling and meeting people for them to become aware of this software and start selling. I think you are at a point where you can actually start selling. But we'll go through the other options in a little bit. So except for when a project is funded through a federal grant, they can totally just go to direct purchase. And that's a huge opportunity for all of us in this room, okay? So keep this in a very high priority for all of you. Quotes and bids. As we move down the list, it gets a little bit more sophisticated, right? So quotes and bids don't require an RFP, but they do require quotes. And in this instance, depending on the policy in the procurement department of the government entity that you're working with or that you want to work with, they may require 1 quote, they may require 2 quotes, they may require 3 quotes. And usually when they require 2 or more quotes, they go with the lowest bid possible. And this is a caveat, there is a caveat, because if you provide something that is different from anybody else, and you can justify it to be more, not necessarily more valuable, but to be different enough that you are almost like a sole source kind of approach, then the amount may not be different. However, it is very tough for me to define that I'm different from, let's say, paper providing, right? My paper is better, higher quality, but if the price is very different, the lower bid is going to win, because the ultimate purpose of paper still being served by any other provider, right? But one important piece here is this quotes and bids are directly with the department or with the point of contact that is actually going to be deploying the purchase. So we haven't gotten to any purchasing department or any committees yet, okay? So this is, Lava calls me and said, you know what is your business, Lava? What is your services?
Filmmaker.
Filmmaker. Okay, so guess what? I'm Visit Las Cruces, and I am actually, this is very like a very real example. I'm Visit Las Cruces, and we are deploying a new marketing campaign, and we need assets. We need video assets, but I have this really rush item that I cannot wait until my RFP is out and my big contract is given. All right. So I need this video that needs to be recorded this weekend. And I know Lava. Lava, can you help me this weekend? Okay, this is like a little rush. A weekend, I don't know if a PO could be issued by a government entity, but you get the point, right? Lava, I know you. How much would you charge me for a video for this location that I need to have it edited in a week? Lava says, you know what? It's about 4,500, and I'll give it to you, right? Like, I will be able to meet your deadline. Okay, I'll issue a PO with direct services, and if it's, let's say, above 5,000, I would need a couple of quotes, but Lava is still the lowest price. So guess what? Me and Lava are gonna start working to have this video recorded, and she's gonna give it to me, and then the project is gonna be final, and I'm gonna pay her directly through the different ways of me paying. But she hasn't talked to the buyer. She hasn't talked to any selection committee. She hasn't submitted a big proposal. It's just very simple and very straightforward. The reason why I'm honing into this example, and you fall under, most of you fall under this example, is when Silvino said, I want to work through the logistics, this is a very straightforward process. So it's like, how do I strategize to not go through, I mean, this is like a medium-term strategy, right? I still can go to apply for like the $150,000 type of contract, 2,500, whatever amount you want to go after. But that's when you are like more mature. So as we start walking as babies, right? We start walking, let's go for the lower, like lower demand type of proposal, lower demand type of even relationship, and lower demand in the logistics as well. So that's something for you too as well, Silvino, as a strategy, okay? So quotes and bids, we're done, we pay off, work done. Next thing, right? As a department. This varies, but for the city of Albuquerque, quotes are required for items between $10,001 all the way to $100,000. So as you see, once we pass the 10,000, the range really opens up to a large amount. Okay, City of Albuquerque, because of the purchasing power, it's the threshold is much higher, which is 100,000 compared to other municipalities, which is 50,000, sometimes 70,000, 75,000. In which case you would need to go through an RFP at that point. But strategically, if I can position my company, my services to do a, I don't know, $95,000 type of proposal, that's still pretty sweet for a solopreneur and for a small business, right? If I can get a couple of those, definitely my business would be on the right track. So make sure that the quotes, it's also a really valuable possibility for you all. Caveat, for quotes and for direct purchases, the issue is that it's not necessarily published broadly. So one of the pieces that I'm going to go into is we need to develop relationships with the people that we want to turn into our buyers, okay? Because the strategy I utilized for that first contract I had as $5,000, guess what it was? How do you think that I was able to get that $5,000 contract? Anybody has a guess?
Already having a relationship or meeting at a, there are a lot of opportunities for having cocktails and talking about the municipalities.
Right.
Yeah, and everything you've been talking about in this section, this is my game. This is what I'm doing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you for sharing, Nandy. And as Nandy mentioned, I had already a connection. A dear friend of mine had worked with that entity, and he knew insightful information. He made an introduction. I had the credentials. I was an easy access. I knew the community. It was an easy move forward. So this is super important, because if you are really truly committed to becoming a government entity, you need to start building relationships as of like today, okay? And we go deeper into that. So a bid is very similar, and it's usually the lowest bid that wins, okay, as mentioned before. There is an item called request of interest. And this is a very tricky one, because the agency is assessing the options available in the market. That doesn't mean that they have the funding. That doesn't mean that they are going to issue an RFP, but it may be that they actually do it. However, an RFI is pretty much it. You go through the same exercise as an RFP, except that there is no certainty that it's going to end up in a contract for anybody. So this can be tricky for us as smaller businesses, but it's something that you need to be aware of what it is and how it works. So the advantages of responding to an RFI is that you put your companies out there, right? If they have an RFP published as the second step, which sometimes it happens, you may already have a lot of the information already crafted, similar to what Rebecca mentioned, that she crafted the grant proposal, and now she has a lot of the information that she can reuse in a different proposal, right? The disadvantages is that it may take longer to generate a contract, if at all, okay? Because it may not move into the next step into an RFP, because they may not have the funding, they may not like what they see in the market, the project may not be ready to move forward, it may be in a different fiscal year, etc. So there are a lot of caveats related to an RFI. Nandy?
I've seen it happen that they like people to give them ideas.
That's true.
And, it can be done this way or, 17 different ways. But the way to get into that without, we don't want to give away our project and our ideas for free, but to ask if they would like some consulting from some of those vendors to actually find out what works for their team.
Yeah, and their RFI is very tricky, right? But I mean, it's similar to what I talked to Siki about, like actually knocking on their doors and start deploying those relationships. It's also good at any given point of the process, except at one point that I'm gonna share with you during an RFP. So an RFP is the longest of the process, but it can be the largest amounts in a contract, right? And the process of an RFP is several steps. The first one is you see a publication of a request for proposal. That's exciting. You get the download of what they envision. Usually the RFPs gives you the context of the project, the department that is going to use it, what is the main purpose, what is the ultimate goal they're looking for. It's good seeing you, Silvino. Thank you for opening your camera. Then, very importantly, when something is published as an RFP, there has to be a period in which the municipality is open for questions. This is very important for two reasons. The first one is once an RFP is open, then everything else, every communication has to go through the point of contact in the RFP. This is super important for all of us. If we go around that point of contact, and let's say there's a purchasing department and I contact the department head of the department that is going to actually be purchasing, I am probably violating their procurement process, and it may end up in me being disqualified as a competitor, okay? So it is super important to follow the instructions on who the point of contact is for the RFP. All right, so there is a selection advisory committee, and this is form of different people. It may be the top leadership, it may be the department that is going to be supporting in the implementation. It may be just people who are there to be the advocates for a specific type of project, etc. We don't know who this selection advisory committee is, but we know it's a large group, okay? And I say this because when we are competing in a project, we are evaluated by a selection committee, all of them are pouring their opinion into who's going to be selected, okay? So everybody votes, everybody evaluates, and everybody has to say to leverage on their knowledge and expertise on why X or Y vendor would need to be selected, okay? Then there is a recommendation of selection. And that's super important because that's where the negotiation starts between the user department and the company, okay? And I've seen where the entity, let's say they have $100,000 and you bet it for 120, where they negotiate with you, how can we reduce the scope of work for those 100,000, or prioritize it, or say, you know what, we can afford it. So if they cannot afford it and there is no way to negotiate it, then that RFP process would be either canceled or they will go to the second option. But this is a very exciting time for the company, because if it is your first contract, there would be all the caveats of defining the contract, defining the timeline, defining the deliverables, who is going to be part of your team, et cetera, et cetera. And then sometimes step number 6, sometimes the contract, it is taken to the city council, to the commissioners, and sometimes you are required to be there to answer any questions. But this varies depending on the government agency and depends on the governmental body, right? I've seen city council members asking tons of questions, and I've seen just the presentation being done and passed right away. But these are all pieces of the puzzle that you need to be aware of. And then finally, a PO, a purchase order, and or a contract is issued. And you have the notice to proceed. Not until you have the contract and or PO and or notice to proceed is that you can actually start working. And I've had, like when I was at the local government, there were a couple of issues in which an engineering firm did work outside of a contract, and that was actually a violation of the procurement policy. And that was a big black eye on both the person who actually told the company to do the work without a contract and the company who actually was doing work without a contract. So both parties are responsible, okay? So you need to make sure that you have a PO, a contract, and a notice to proceed, or something that meets their policy on procurement. The biggest caveat is that and I'll tell you an example. I submitted a proposal March of 2023, okay? They went through the process. It was a, thank you, Aaron. It was a process that it was, they needed it very quickly. And yet since the proposal was submitted in April, I got the contract in August. I started the work in September, okay? So the biggest caveat of RFPs is that you need to be sufficiently sustainable to wait for their internal process, okay? So this is the biggest caveat to an RFP. Questions up to now? Comments? Slow me down if I'm going too fast, okay? Silvino, you have questions?
Well, I was about to say, like you said, it could be a long waiting process, right? Within that contract that you send them, can you say, hey, if we don't get it until August, we're not going to start until November? I mean, it affects us as a company too. You know what I mean?
Right, right. So one of the tricks to manage that, Silvino, if you are willing, because it's a bureaucracy, right? It doesn't matter if it's a small community or if it's a large community, it's still a bureaucracy, and they still have to be processes because they are utilizing public funds. So there is a bureaucracy for the right reasons. Hopefully everybody does follow the process. But what I do is when I lay out the scope of work and the stages of the work, what I do is I don't say dates. I say, let's say month 1. Month 1 would be this process. Month 2 would be this. Month 3, this would be that. And super important, Silvino, and everybody else, to include in your proposal. This timeline starts when the contract starts, okay? Just to keep expectations real and to keep making sure that everybody is clear on what is going on. So so that's what I have done, and actually I can show you a very simple Excel spreadsheet where I outlined the tasks, and then I did a little Gantt chart, but very simple. Month 1, these are the tasks. Month 2, these are the tasks. Month 3, these are the tasks. And that has worked pretty recently well. Any other questions? Okay. When there is an award, that's what it's called when you get a contract, right? Often cannot be made to the lowest price alone. And this is an advantage to you sometimes, because it is basically, especially when they are federal funds attached, the price is the last thing that is open. So when the selection committee is discussing, nobody knows what the quoted price for those services are. So if you are the most qualified, your proposal is the best one, there is no questions asked, the price is the last piece to be actually released to the end user department. And that is where the advantage is, because it's not based on the cheapest versus the lowest bid that we talked about, right? So even if it's a longer process, the monetary piece to it may be more advantageous to you all. Okay, so and it so allows for the best accomplished proposal rather than the cheapest item on the shelf. Okay, so let's take a little break. Let's take a 5-minute break for us to go to the next topic, which is what to do for local and state procurement. So it is 11:01. Let's come back at 11:06. Okay, all right. So let's continue. All right, so the next thing is, how do we actually get to this information? And that was Lava's question, right? How do we find them? The first thing is, who do you have in mind as your first client? Like, if you open your mic, Silvino and Lava and Rebecca, Wesley, if anybody else can speak, that whoever has the camera off, please feel free. I just
First client hopefully will be the federal government.
okay, so federal government, tell me more, Rebecca. Is this through this grant that you were talking about?
Yes, yes. It's
Okay.
specifically the Strategic Environmental Research Development Program,
Okay,
SEDRP. It's part of the Department of Defense
got it.
and also Department of Energy, and they work some with the EPA.
Got it, got it. If it was not, okay, so if it was not federal government, Rebecca, have you given thought of what local and or state would be a client?
Potentially manufacturers of antimicrobial materials.
So it would not be
Testing, yeah.
government, it would be private entities.
Yes, there could be private entities.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, maybe some things come up here that may be interesting for you, Rebecca. Let's see. Silvino.
I probably would go for anybody that does building design. I mean, because we're in design and we do drafting and engineering for private sector.
But you want to go into the public sector as expanding your business?
Yeah, to expand my portfolio, I
Got
think it would be a good source of revenue and also put us in another category of options or services that we could utilize, and
Understand. Where are you
me
located, Silvino?
in Los Lunas, New Mexico.
Los Lunas. Okay. 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 So, and I'll go into that in a little bit. How about you, Lava? Thank you for sharing, Silvino.
Sorry.
I'm like, she may not be available, but I'm glad you are.
No, I'm just having a moment. No, I think maybe the New Mexico Department of Health, because I've seen a lot of video work come out of there, and I've been hired through other entities to create videos for
Another public entities to create videos or private?
They were just other private vendors were
Got
hired.
it. Got it. Okay, Department of Health. All right. Okay, so this is what I would recommend you. Think really hard, because we already have a network, right? As people in the field in our industry, or we already have access to networks. So think in two options. The first one is, who do I know that could connect me to a local entity, whether it's Los Lunas. Lava, you are in Albuquerque? Yeah, whether it's Los Lunas, Albuquerque, somebody was from Valencia. Like, who do I know that they may know somebody within the government? Okay. And it's just starting to understand how that specific entity works. And what are the opportunities for you to establish a relationship with either the department, that it's actually the end user or the buying department. So I'll tell you specifics. Silvino, have you ever established contact with anybody within the local municipality government? Like the engineering department or the purchasing department or the building and maintenance? Silvino? I think you're muted.
I'm sorry, what was that question again?
See the question, have you been in contact, because you've been in business for a while, right? So have you been in contact with either like the engineering department or the maintenance, facilities and maintenance, or the purchasing department within Los Lunas as a municipal
No,
government?
I've met them and talked to the city council and stuff like that, but because I know if they were even to go, hey, we got a job that you can look at, I'm just not prepared in that.
Ah, okay, so that goes back to the logistics.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, all right. So I'll okay. Okay, I see what you're talking about.
It's like I can look at drawings and blueprints and go, hey, y'all are building a freeway over here. I can help out and do some design girders and stuff. But I just don't have my logistics, in-house logistics nailed down. So it's just me meeting them and talking to them and seeing what's going on. I don't want to go out there and go, hey, I can do this for you, because then they'll be like, okay, well, where's all your paperwork? And I'll be
Okay.
like,
So we're gonna go into that piece, and actually, I think you may be closer than you think, but there's a process that you would have to follow up. So it's not like you're showing up with them and saying, let me start work, right? But it's like the reason why I asked if you have talked to them is so you understand what is their priority, what projects are they working on, and not necessarily selling, but establishing that communication and you to become to learn about their needs, their priorities, their potential next project, right? Same for you, Lava. I think it would be really interesting for you to establish contact with the entity you said, Department of Health, and just understand like what is the purpose of the videos you're creating, right? Like, do you have like specific vendor that you like to go with? Because as humans, once we establish a good working relationship, right, that's what we tend to go to. And so as a strategy is, how do I establish a working relationship, even me not selling, but just genuinely interested in where they are, what they're doing, what their priorities are, etc. Okay. So number one thing is, even before you call them, find their website and find their buying department. And it can be different ways. It can be newsletters, it can be city council meetings, it can be city council agendas, commissioners, etc. But for you to start understanding what's going on. And this is looking for clues that will help you see where the opportunity is, right? Visit their website, like go to the city of Albuquerque, visit their website, see what's going on in the film, see who's doing what in terms of those opportunities. Another big piece is, like, for instance, on the bigger contracts and design and contract, all of these funds have to go through a process of approval, and everything in terms of design and construction goes into a capital improvement plan. So Silvino, for instance, for you, if you think you will be ready in a year from now, start looking at the capital improvement plan that is for 2025, right? So it's like, how do I start seeing the future through their budgeting process, okay? And this applies to other people as well. For instance, and please, if you have examples, Ziani, Valerie, Joseph, Ziki, Damelia, Robert, I mean, Robert is, I think, is part of our team. If you have examples, that you want to share with me, and I can tailor the comments, please feel free to open the mic or put it in the chat. But entity strategic plan. And I'll tell you an example. If I'm Visit Las Cruces and I have a strategic plan to say, you know, I'm going to increase the number of outside of state visitors by 2025, what is a key item that I need to do that? I need to create video. I need to create social media campaigns. I need to create a marketing campaign. I need to send, you know, I have to have swag. And so why is that important for me? Because if I am a producer of film, how can I help them complete their goal while my company is providing that service, right? Similar to Joseph. Hey, in Las Cruces, actually, there was a big deal about a skate park. So how can you connect to that group and then now be part of the community and talk to the mayor about the priorities and talk about like how can we establish a partnership to support the skate park with swag that represents the BMX, all of these things. So how can I start painting a picture of how I can help them achieve their goals, right? So this is, you become a bridge between what they need to do and where they are. And there is a gap in between and you become the bridge, okay? Newspapers and newsletters. A lot of smaller communities don't have a website, but they do have newsletters where they publish the RFPs coming up. Payment timelines, state, municipal, and federal. I am going to touch on that, Wesley, briefly, because it varies, but I will touch on that a little bit. And then if you're really desperate to find something and you're not finding it, or people are not sharing with you information, there's something called the Inspection of Public Records Act. That would be the last resort that I would recommend using it, because usually staff don't appreciate EPRA requests. But if you actually need something and it's a public record, you can utilize the EPRA as a way to request information, okay? So because this is public funds, therefore, if it's a public entity, therefore these are public funds, and therefore public funds have to disclose their budget, their policies, how this contract was given, etc. So this is a point of leverage for you, because then you can start understanding what is going on behind the scenes. Budget cycle. Okay, so creating a competitive packet. This ties to the requirements, and I think Wesley and Silvino mentioned about this. I may not be ready. I need to meet the requirements, right? So when I say visit their website, understand their policies, their procurement process, because they have to publish, they have to make this information available for everyone, not just for you, but for everyone. And I'll give you an example. Doing business with the city of Las Cruces, on their website, they have published what type of insurance anybody who is a vendor, what they need to have. So if I'm getting ready to have a contract for the city of Las Cruces, and I know I don't have a general liability, I better start getting my general liability in order, right? So these are pieces that are required that you can start preparing for the time that you are ready to go forward. Bernalillo, how to become a vendor for Bernalillo. And this is